Well, hello and welcome back to Greg's Game Room. Now today I have a couple of developers who you may know of who developed the game Q Bert. Warren Davis is the programmer of Q Bert and Jeff Lee did the artwork. Warren and Jeff,
Hello.
thank you very much for joining me here today.
My pleasure.
It's an honor to meet both of you. Q Bert's one of my favorite characters.
Thank you.
Forget Pac-Man. We don't care about Pac-Man.
No,
Q Bert is the
He has
Q
no
Bert's-
personality.
Q Bert's the man. Yeah, exactly. Let's go ahead and get started. So give me a little bit of the backstory about Q Bert. Now, how did you guys come up with this character?
Well, it was an evolution. Definitely. Before there was a character, there were the cubes, Escher's cubes, which date back to Roman times or earlier. That shape.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an optical illusion. It's flat, but
Right.
it looks like a three-dimensional set of cubes.
Right. So I was, ever since my college days, I'm a big fan of MC Escher, and back in the psychedelic black light poster era, and those were on college dorm walls. So once I was at Gottlieb, 1981, and had some art tools, naturally at some point, it was inevitable that I would throw that stuff up onto the screen. And that's kind of where it started.
I was pretty new. I had been there a few months, never made a game before in my life. I was working as a supplemental programmer for another programmer named Tom Malinowski, who was working on a superhero game, and I made a couple of contributions to that game. But then it was like, okay, that game got canceled. Unfortunately, didn't get released. But then it was like, all right, well, why? Let's make a game. And when I saw this, this Escher pattern on Kahn's monitor, I thought, well, it's interesting because the way, you see, if you carve that into a pyramid and something lands on the top, it has one of two ways it can bounce, left or right.
Right.
Well, that's binary. And programmers like binary stuff. So, as an exercise, I just said to myself, I just want to make a ball bouncing down this pyramid with gravity and randomness. And that's what I did. So I was like, okay, now I've learned that. But then people would come by and they'd say, well, that looks pretty cool. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should put a player character on there. And Jeff had created all these characters.
Yeah, I had done a little game proposal for a pyramid of cubes. It was so obvious that was the thing to do, but I imagined a shooting game. So this character had a nose to shoot
Yeah.
the boogers from or whatever, and then I also, very complicated thing where you could switch planes, the player character and enemies and stuff. So I had written up a proposal for that. Warren pretty much threw out all that and made it a much simpler game, which is actually pretty perfect.
We didn't have, graphics co-processors or floating point co-processors. This was like really crude, processing that we had available to us and slow processing. So I resisted a lot of Jeff's ideas, but I was so intrigued by that thing that I actually figured it out. And that's how we got Ugg It Wrong Way
Right.
finally. But I resisted it for a really long time. So at the point where I actually had a character, which was Q Bert, unnamed at the time, a character is hopping around on the cubes. The balls are bouncing down. He's got to avoid them. The balls will hit him. The collision detection was also something I had to work out. But that's what I had. And I'm just sitting one night, and Waxman was our VP of engineering. And he would sit in his office most of the day, but at night, like if we were working late, he'd come out and he would just sit behind you. And he would smoke a cigar, and he would sound like Darth Vader behind you. Just hear this breathing behind you,
He was this
Large.
obese man. They called him Mr. 5x5, some people did. Could be very intimidating, but he was a great guy, heart of gold.
He was sitting behind me, and I was just playing the game and trying to think what next. Because literally, for me, there was no overarching plan. It was always what's next. And he's sitting behind me, and he goes, what if the colors change when he lands on it? And I was like,
There you go.
That was a great idea. So then it became a game to me because there was a goal.
Right.
So now you had a goal that wasn't just avoiding balls. It wasn't, and then all the elements just sort of came one by one. It's like, all right, I did that. What's next? And Jeff was, my collaborator. So we, put our heads together. Other people came in and gave us ideas. Many of them I did not take. When we got a good idea, I would take it. The knocker is a good example. We had an engineering tech. His name was Rick Ty, and he was like, hey, what if we put a pinball knocker in the cabinet when he jumps off? And I thought that was a great idea, but I didn't like the sound of the knock because it sounds like somebody knocking on the door. I'm like,
right.
It's very sharp. It's very sharp. Right?
Yeah, it should sound like a sack of potatoes hitting the ground when you drop it from a height. So I wanted a thud.
Mm-hmm.
And we played around, we kicked it around, and we had this idea of put a teeny little piece of foam. Like they would have these pieces of foam at the end of tubes of EPROMs. And if you just take that piece of foam and stick it where the knocker is, it softened the sound. It was perfect. It was amazing how perfect it sounded. It sounded like a body hitting the bottom of the cabinet. So I put that feature in, and then we went to management and said, we got to have this feature. And they were like, well, we can do the knocker, but to get somebody to actually put that foam in the right place and stick it there, they said that would be labor intensive and add $15 to the cost of each game. We're not going to do it.
Right. So I always recommend to collectors, people who curate these games these days, to add that foam.
Yeah.
That's like the
Pièce de la Resistance.
right.
The
To really
resistance.
make it super authentic, put in that foam.
Yeah.
Because management's given feature.
Yeah.
And you'll get.
But it really doesn't. It sounds like a body.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that actually makes it enjoyable to jump off the side of the pyramid. Just like you get to hear that knocking noise.
It's kind of
Like, oh,
satisfying.
yeah, it is. In a way, it's like the most satisfying.
It's
death in
closure.
video
It
games.
represents closure.
Right.
For Jeff, as an artist, what kind of difficulties did you have in overcoming the memory limitations of a system back in those days?
It was, I don't know, not so much a problem because I was presented with, here's these limitations, here's your tools. And so I always had to work within those parameters. It was a challenge, and it was a challenge I enjoyed adhering to that, trying to make an economy out of what you had to make it do more than you could. I really loved working with 128 backgrounds, tiles, and rendering them in a way they would work with each other to get like a variety of backgrounds or whatever. That is just like such a puzzle. It became a pleasure to work with that. So I didn't consider it a terrible problem.
Right.
What bothered me more was the fact that we didn't have any scrolling hardware or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true.
And like so many game ideas fell by the wayside because, we don't have scrolling hardware. So I would find something like that frustrating.
Now, did you draw a lot of the characters just on hand and transfer them over into like graph paper, or how did that process work?
Yes, definitely. I became an artist in an era where you didn't have any computers, any of those kind of tools. So it's a matter of draftsmanship, design sense. So I always would draw stuff, and then graph paper, overlaid it, and that was another thing. I had some background as an animator, do cell animation and tracings and all that. So it was just a natural transition to do that, and then turn it into like these jagged shapes.
Yeah.
It was fun. I worked on a light table, and then we had several different tools, graphic tools to use to put that into this final form, ready to get transferred to the realms.
Cool. I have to say that it's very difficult to do what Jeff did, to have those limitations and to make things have the personality they did. Like I was amazed in the game that I call Pro Vidgard Argus, because it was a game with many names, the superhero game that didn't get released. And Jeff made these little characters that were humans you had to protect, walking along the bottom of the screen. They were like, what, 10 pixels tall maybe? I mean,
Well, they would have been 16 tall.
you think?
Yeah,
Were they that tall?
yeah.
And then, but they had their own walks.
Yeah.
They had their own personalities, these little pixel people. It was
And-
literally amazing.
And did you keep all your original artwork and everything?
I kept a lot of it. Grid stuff on grid paper, tracings. I have a lot of that, and some of it I've been putting into like these coloring books. I'm making some coloring books,
Oh, there you go.
mostly Qbert related. published a memoir last year, and as Warren has done this year. So I incorporated samples of that. So I have quite a bit of it, quite a bit of that art. I'm kind of a pack rat.
Yeah. So you have a memoir as well. Let's tell me a little bit about that.
We both were talking about writing because we, as this whole retro gaming thing came about over the years, and we find ourselves invited to shows like this and asked to tell stories, and there are so many stories to tell. Both individually were thinking of doing this, and we were talking about it. But Jeff took a tack of including as many old Gottlieb folks as possible, and really sort of telling an oral history of Gottlieb through its games. I had years at Midway and some years at Disney, and then years after that in the home game industry. And I thought, well, I think I just want to do more of a memoir, like a personal memoir of just the things I worked on. And I really feel like the two books kind of complement each other. Between the two of them, they really tell a much more complete story.
Yeah, and they kind of crisscross each other. Mine really concentrates on the Gottlieb Milestar games. We're older men now. We're not going to be around much longer, and the people who love these games are generation younger, and they will continue and be passing that on to their kids or whatever, preserving these games. So I wanted these stories to be told. We went around, interviewed everyone we could that we've worked with, and some of them are now passed. And then Warren had a different story. He contributed a lot to my memoir, his recollections of what happened. And then he had a whole different story to tell.
I was going to say, do you have any one of those? It didn't happen that way. It happened this way.
I attribute that to alternating parallel universes.
Yeah. I don't think it diverges wildly, and I think it doesn't diverge very much.
No.
But, and we worked. The thing is, we worked together a number of times, not just on Qbert. Then there was Faster, Harder, More Challenging Qbert. Jeff did the graphics for Us Versus Them, which is a Laserdisc game that I worked on. We worked together on Lotto Fun. We worked together on Exterminator. Am I missing anything? We worked together on projects that didn't come to fruition.
Right, yeah, there's a couple of those.
Yeah. I love working with Jeff. I mean, Jeff is like an amazing, talented guy. As a programmer who's not really an artist, you really can't ask for more than just a great person to bounce ideas off of, somebody you can just, say anything to, and it just, we always work well together. It's both easy going.
Yeah. And Warren obviously brings a lot to the project. I mean, his programming skill, and he has another career as an actor, so he has his dramatic storytelling background and a sense of production.
Yeah, well, as a filmmaker too, because I also make short films. Us Versus Them was a Laserdisc game. Meant as a kit for Mach 3. So it had a Laserdisc background with flying footage and then computer graphics superimposed. But what we added to that, and Dennis Nordman, by the way, was like the chief, he's the guy who had the idea for this. And I kind of helped shape it into something that was practical. Because he had this really highfalutin idea to be like a movie, which I was all into. But
and there was a movie.
And there was a movie. And so we had a script, we had actors,
sets,
and sets and flying footage. But the way we ended up structuring it is we had a little like a 10 to 15 second scene with actors. And then we'd cut to a fighter pilot, and then we'd cut into a scene where you're actually playing the game.
And it might be like a side-scrolling view, or it might be a head-on stuff flying at you.
Right.
Yeah, so the original concept was to keep changing the camera angle, but I thought if you're playing, it's very disorienting to keep changing the camera angle. So we thought, well, every wave, every level will be a different camera angle. Right. And that's what we ended up doing. And it would have been a success. It was really testing through the roof. We were very excited about it. But then the Laserdisc fiasco happened. And what happened was, arcade owners began to realize that the laser discs, the players would skip if somebody kicked or banged a cabinet, and people would ask for their money back, and the technology just was not quite ready for prime time. And so all Laserdisc games just died a complete death. And Us Versus Them just happened to come out when this was happening.
So you kind of led into another one of my questions, Warren. You do some acting, right?
I do some acting.
And you do some writing, and you do some directing. Which do you prefer, and what projects are you working on right now?
I love doing pretty much everything I do. And I think because maybe I have a short attention span, if I were to just do one thing in my life, I probably would get bored with it. So I still do software, by the way, and I still work on games in some capacity as a consultant for Sony. I also still act in theater. I just did a play at a theater in Beverly Hills called Theater 40. A short film that I was in that I shot back in like January or February is going around making the rounds to festivals and is winning all sorts of awards at festivals. Yeah, so
What's it called?
it's called Florence.
Florence.
It's a short film.
A woman or a city?
A woman named Florence.
Okay. How can we view it?
I don't know that it's available.
You have to go to a festival.
Well, right at the moment, it's making a festival circuit,
right.
so that's kind of where it is, and who knows what will happen to them. Yeah, the thing is, I just do things as they come along. Opportunities come along every now and then. The last TV show I did was The Middle, which was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I actually
The Ice Cube episode.
Yeah, that's right. And I was booked on another show, How to Get Away with Murder, but before I shot my part, they cut the part. So, I'm just happy to be in the mix, It's just nice to be around, and opportunities come up, and I'm happy to go for it.
Very cool. So I think personally that Qbert has kind of had a bit of a renaissance in the past couple of years. He appeared in the movie Pixels, and he appeared in Wreck-It Ralph. Did you guys have any input in making those movies? Did they talk to you at all about that?
I've never had any contact or recognition, outreach from Sony. And Warren actually has a story about.
Okay.
No, that was, back in the 90s, I went to a game developers conference. The game developers conference they have every year up in the San Francisco area. So I went up to these guys from Sony and I said, there's sort of a renaissance going on with old games. How come you're not doing anything with Qbert? And he looked at me quizzically and said, what? I said, well, Sony owns the rights to Qbert. He's like, we own the rights to Qbert? And he calls his colleagues over and he's scribbling something on a piece. Did you know we own the rights to Qbert? And then about a year later, there was a Qbert that came out for the PC. So, I was the one who told Sony that they owned the rights to Qbert.
Wow.
They didn't know.
They didn't know and didn't care. Well, they started then to exploit it. Then
we've never owned any rights to Qbert. As employees of Gottlieb, we signed something as we were hired that said anything we create there is owned by the company. It's what happens to everybody. Yeah. So no, we have never had any sort of stake in Qbert.
Now, does the character that appears in the movie, I saw you doing the thumbs down there, does that mean that you don't agree with the style of character they turned him into?
Well, I thought Pixels was it was a pretty unwatchable movie. Wreck-It Ralph had come out first, the first one, and I thought that was great. Several scenes with the interaction with Ralph and Fix-It Felix and all that. It was great stuff. It was very touching, very spot on. So that was wonderful. And then Pixel came along, and I found it pretty unwatchable. And then I just didn't get what happened at the end.
It was a very confusing
Qbert
movie.
morphed into some other character, and then there's baby Qberts, and it just didn't make sense.
I can't imagine you thought that was a good idea.
No.
I was happy to see, I'm always happy to see Qbert resurrected for a new audience. And I honestly, I think it's that can only be a good thing. And it's not financially good for us. We have no stake in it. But it's a matter of pride.
What was the most fun you ever had making a game?
Wow. Qbert was pretty fun because there were no rules. We were just kind of making it up as we were going along. There was no management hammering on us. There was no deadlines. There was no schedule. It was literally just make a game.
Well, actually, Exterminator was kind of that way too.
Is that the one with the hand?
With the hands.
Yeah.
Because at that point, we were both independent contractors. Premiere, which was Gottlieb's successor in pinball, decided one more shot at a video. So
the president of the company, Gil Pollock, who was running Premiere, one of the VPs at Gottlieb, and then he basically bought up all of the pinball division when Gottlieb closed and opened up his own company called Premiere. So I was just saying, let's keep this a secret. It was my philosophy. And like a month later, in a trade magazine, I read, Bill Pollock's announcing that he's coming out with a video game next year. Like, okay, there's our deadline. Now we have a deadline.
But for me, it was fun. We had digital technology at this point for video, okay? So I could shoot stuff on a camcorder. When I saw that game a couple years ago, they restored one at the Elfin Ghost. It was such a nostalgia trip because we had filmed a lot of stuff in our homes. We used like footage of my kids' room as the background, our kitchen, my mom's garage. So for me, there's these places from my lifetime that were representing this game. I had forgot about a lot.
Right.
And then seeing it every day, I was like, oh my God, that's my kid's bedroom.
We made sure that it was capable of foreground and background, 256 colors, so digitized graphics. And
yeah, for me, that was a new playground.
I was about to
that
ask,
many colors.
how does that affect
Oh my God.
you're doing?
Yeah. It was almost like too much.
Yeah.
But you could design whole palettes of shades and then use those to feather things out. Yeah, make it look much smoother. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
when I went back to Williams after this sort of fiasco at Premiere, I went back to Williams to do Terminator 2 and continued to develop my digitizing system there. And the beautiful thing about Williams was they kept developing their video game hardware by adding palette memory. So whereas we started with 256 colors, we eventually had multiple palettes of 256 colors. So like each character could have their own 256 color palette. We were really always trying to push the envelope of what we could do with hardware and software, even through the 90s. And then what happened is everything went to 3D polygons.
Right.
So this whole 2D digitizing just kind of fell by the wayside.
Anything else you would like to discuss that you're working on these days?
Well, and I got introduced to this retro gaming scene, which I did not imagine it existed. It's one of the largest arcades in my neighborhood. I started producing, some prints, some posters, and memoir, and got some more books of me, not related to video games necessarily, but I'm at an age where me and Warren and some of my other friends were writing memoirs and stuff. Retired or semi-retired, and people have time to do this. So that's a goal of mine to produce some more of that material.
Cool. Warren, how about you? You talked about some of the acting and directing stuff you've been working on. Anything?
I'm also an amateur magician.
Oh, cool.
I'm a member of the Academy of Magical Arts in California, which is associated with the Magic Castle. So yeah, I'm just, again, many interests, doing a lot of things and enjoying them all, as well as coming to retro gaming shows. I just find connecting with fans and talking to people, telling stories. As long as people are interested in having me, I'm happy to go and be a part of it.
It's always nice to have such a positive reception to work you did.
Yeah.
And that it's like a fond memory. It's nostalgia for people. It takes them back to a good time in their life, something that was meaningful and important to them. And so it's great to be part of that.
Yeah, I mean,
in a tangential way.
It's a gift for us to have been a part of it. I know people are constantly saying to us, "Well, thank you for making that game," but it's the gratitude goes both ways. We never expected people to be talking about something we did 35 years ago.
Right. So I feel very lucky, probably undeserving, actually. Some of these accolades.
That's not true. That's not true. The work you did, the talent that you conveyed, the way you were able to get these things done is definitely worthy of respect.
Well, I'll tell you, I'd be glad. I'm grateful to receive some respect.
Well,
because we get not normally.
Well, you guys created a beloved character that so many video game fans remember and love. So,
and some of that has to go to Mr. David Thiel too. Who
yes.
Created the. Right. We didn't talk about David much, but he created the audio, and that's like one of the things that sticks in your mind are those fantastic sounds.
I always felt we were a triumvirate. The three of us created the game.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me here in the game room. It is an honor to meet both of you. And if you want to check out Warren and Jeff's books, I'll put links to I take it that they're on Amazon?
No.
They're not on Amazon. Where can we get these books?
Well, sorry, I'll go first, but mine's hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses.
I've literally taken it to this show, and it is nowhere else. But I'm working to get it online and available online.
And my son set up a website where I sell books.
Okay.
JeffreyPLee.com, I think, should do it, but I can get you the information.
Give me the information.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the link to the video. I'll splice it right in there.
Right. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.